Well, there's been such a flurry of political book launches lately, but today's was somewhat unusual. Gareth Evans' diaries are unique because he's waited 30 years to publish what he had written about the early years of the Hawke government. Unusual too because Paul Keating turned out to launch it. Now, Mr Keating admits that he doesn't like book launches, tries to avoid them because he has to read every word. And it's clear that he did hang on every word of this book, dissecting in particular the bits about him. But he's a former Prime Minister who still maintains the admiration of this author.
Paul really is not only a larger-than-life, but I suspect a globally unique combination of statesman, showman, aesthete and street fighter.
Well, it's clear from this diary that the rivalry between Bob Hawke and Paul Keating had its genesis way back in those early years, 1984, 1985. And of course, Paul Keating speaks with such disdain to this day about Bob Hawke and some of his behaviour at the time. And he really wanted to pick up on the idea that Bob Hawke was a lucky Prime Minister. He says he was lucky because he, Paul Keating, carried him for so many years.
I won't have people say that he ran the show from 84 to 89. He didn't. And I wouldn't be speaking about this if these references were not there about the lucky mug. But the truth was, Bob was a lucky mug in this context. When people say about this period, look, you've got to be very lucky to be Prime Minister of Australia, one. But to be Prime Minister of Australia and have 5 years downtime, you've got to be more than lucky, you know? And the history deserves to know that that's the way it was.
When he's not talking about himself, Paul Keating certainly does a lot of talking about Bob Hawke, including some amazing insights into visits by Gareth Evans and himself to the Lodge, where the Prime Minister would often be there to greet them in a most unusual way.
I arrived at the Lodge at 10:30 to find Bob, as usual, sunning himself beside the pool. He used to often do this in the nude, of course. I did have a few things to say about midgets and their other parts on one of these occasions, but this is not the occasion to repeat it. And then this was all about. I said, Gareth and I are out there in a suit one day, and we're sweating, and Bob's in the nude. I said as I left, don't worry about all these midgets, mate. They all have these little, things. Anyway, so Gareth said, but it does take a certain chutzpah to meet ministers in the nude.
So many references to Paul Keating in this diary and a front cover picture as well, but the pressure remains on him to try and publish his own works. That's looking unlikely based on his comments today. He says governing people for so many years is hard enough. He doesn't want to have to entertain them too for another 20 or 25 years.